Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 236, Twin Jades. In all the time Ji Gang watched Shen Zequan grow up, he had never expected Shen Zequan to become a noble or a minister. All he hoped for was for Shen Zequan to be safe and sound, for things to go smoothly for him, and to have an abundance of children in the future. Anyone could forget that one kick from Xiao Qiye in Chu capital, but not Ji Gang, for Shen Zequan was his one and only remaining son. It was now that Ji Gang recalled those words Xiao Qiye said back in Tse province. It seemed as if it was all premeditated. This scoundrel had long planned to show his hand to him. How ludicrous that everyone could see that, and yet there he was, deceiving himself and believing his own lies. He even defended and made excuses for this scoundrel in every way possible. Brotherhood. My foot. Ji Gang threw a few punches at him, but it was not enough to assuage his wrath. He grabbed the horsewhip that had been set at the side and said, "I invited a wolf into the house and believed your lies. You have had designs on Chuan Heir a long time back, since Tse province." His fury grew the more he spoke, and he was, at present, totally oblivious to everything that was good about Xiao Qiye. All he remembered were the old debts. He lashed out with the whip and seated. "I'll beat you to death. Shifu, Shifu." How would Fei Shen dare to let Ji Gang continue striking out at Xiao Qiye? He attempted to persuade, Second Master's willingness to accept a beating from Shifu means he genuinely intends to tell Shifu. This matter doesn't involve outsiders. Let's all sit down in our courtyard and have a proper talk. His lordship is still waiting for you. Get lost. Ji Gang bellowed. All of you are a bunch of scoundrels too. The Jin Wei in this courtyard had all received pointers from Ji Gang before, and they could be considered as Ji Gang's disciples. So which of them would dare to stop Ji Gang on seeing how fierce he was? Moreover, this horsewhip belonged to Xiao Qiye, and it was much heavier than the one in Tse province. One lash alone felt like an explosion of searing hot pain that seemed to rip one's flesh apart. Ji Gang was really enraged now. It was different from that time in Tse province. Xiao Qiye's wide-sleeved robe could not block the blows, and every lash drew streaks of blood. Ji Gang whipped with such ferocity that Xiao Qiye sucked in a few gasps of the chilly air. Seeing Xiao Qiye stubbornly refuse to admit his fault, he hatefully spat, "Whether it goes through or not when I find a marriage match for him is none of your business." No. Xiao Qiye refused to concede when it came to this. He was not willing to speak a single word of falsehood. There are plenty of decent men in the world. Shen Lanzhou is the one and only one I will not give away to anyone. Ji Gang was so incensed he felt dizzy. Pointing the horsewhip at him, he said, "You wanted to kill my son, and now you even want to cut off his bloodline. If you are not going to marry a wife and bear children, why don't you cut yourself off first?" Cut sleeves did not need to hide themselves in Chu capital. Ji Gang had seen his fair share of them when he served as the vice commander of the Jin Wei. They were inseparable now, deeply attached to each other like glue, but after several years, they all had to marry and have children. Furthermore, Xiao Qiye was Xiao Fangxiu's son of legitimate birth. If Xiao Jiming did not take up the mantle on the battlefield, then it would fall upon Xiao Qiye to assume responsibility for it. Once he became the alpha wolf of Libei in the future, whether or not he took a wife would no longer be his own personal affair, but that of the entire Libei armored cavalry. The Xiao clan possessed 120,000 strong armored cavalry. Should the Xiao and Ji households form a marriage alliance between them, it would secure and stabilize the friendship between Zongbo and Libei. Thus, Ji Gang ought to give the nod in both public and private interests, but this was provided that Xiao Qiye was a maiden. Had that been the case, then even if he was an outwardly brash one who ran hot and cold, Ji Gang would have been willing to accept him, as long as Shen Zequan wanted him. If Shifu is willing to agree to it, I'll get my eldest sister-in-law to come over to propose marriage. If not, I can also marry into the family. Having been at the receiving end of Xiao Fangxiu's beatings, Xiao Qiye was not in the least bit afraid of these few lashes from Ji Gang. Since Ji Gang wanted to settle the score today, then no matter what he said today, he had to get Ji Gang's nod. Ji Gang was so choke speechless that he tilted over backward. Fei Sheng hurriedly supported him. Ji Gang felt that Xiao Qiye was not proposing marriage, but forcing a marriage. He had never seen such a self-righteous villain. With hands on both knees, Xiao Qiye pressed home his attack. Lan Zhou accepted my eldest sister-in-law's bracelets. He has long been mine, he's Xiao Xian's. How can Shifu find another woman for him? If he really goes to meet her, then he'd be a heartless cad. Shifu wants children, then Ding Tao and Li Xiang are both young, they can relieve your boredom by staying with you. I couldn't care less if it pleases Shifu to raise them until the age of 27 or 28 before marrying them off. Ji Gang noted how Xiao Qiye was spouting nonsense in all seriousness. How were Ding Tao and Li Xiang still children? They were already 18 or 19 of age. It was considered late now to even throw them out of the house to attend to official duties. This wasn't what this was about at all. Shifu, please give your assent. Xiao Qiye propped himself with both hands on the floor and kowtowed. If Shifu doesn't give the nod, I'll call you father. Ji Gang could hold such prestige in the Jinyi way because he was a reasonable man. For Shen Zequan, he had put a lot of thought into this matter. Were Xiao Qiye to sit down to reason with Ji Gang, there would be no way he could convince the latter. Shen Zequan had a bearing on the Libei military grains, so Ji Gang was bound to worry if Libei's consent now was because of the military grains or the current situation. How in the world would Ji Gang expect Xiao Qiye to be so shameless and thick-skinned to force him into a quandary right outside the door? It would prove hard for him to walk away if he did not give the nod today. Ji Gang squeezed the words through clenched teeth. Stop trying to dupe me with your sweet words. Even if your eldest sis-in-law really comes, I won't meet her. Even so, you have to meet Lan Zhou. Xiao Qiye said without raising his head. Father, Lan Zhou is clueless about all these etiquettes. Without you by his side to watch over him, he will be tricked by my eldest sister-in-law back to Libei to be. Xiao Qiye was momentarily stumped for words, but very quickly, he continued, her younger brother-in-law. If you want to fulfill my wish this way, I'd be happy, too. Ji Gang flung the horsewhip to the ground, driven beyond the limits of his forbearance. Shut up. He had to refute Xiao Qiye, so he gritted his teeth and said, don't you ever think of marrying into the family. Xiao Qiye's robe was slightly opened, and the flush on his neck had faded. Ji Gang refused to let Xiao Qiye get inside, and Xiao Qiye did not dispute Ji Gang either. The rain poured in urgent torrents, and it was chilly under the eaves. Ji Gang's fury did not diminish, but the overwhelming rush to his head earlier was gone. With a solemn expression and a serious countenance, Xiao Qiye said, all that Shifu worries about has crossed my mind too. My eldest brother and sister-in-law have a harmonious relationship. They have Sun Heir now, and they will still go on to have children in the future. Libei doesn't need me to beget another child, and I do not have the intention to either. Shifu watched Lan Zhou grow up and hopes for him to have a blissful family life. I know that, and I wish the same, too. Isn't my loving him, respecting him, and living to a ripe old age with him bliss, too? Shifu can't trust me and fears that Lan Zhou will suffer being wronged in the future, so you want to find Lan Zhou a woman. It's indeed not my place to interfere, but I've already given him this life of mine. His wanting of another person is akin to killing me. Xiao Qiye was no ordinary man. He had both the courage and the means. They might now be a pair of twin jades who seemed to get along swimmingly, but what would happen when the war was over? If he had a change of heart, he had plenty of ways to end this relationship. What Ji Gang feared the most was Shen Zequan being all alone by his lonesome self after his passing. Everyone addressed Shen Zequan with the honorific address of the prefectural lord right now. It was only to Ji Gang that Shen Zequin was just Jew on air. There was still much for him to worry about. Ji Gang did not dare to make this wager. He could not trust Xiao Qi yet. For a long time, Xiao Qi Ye did not get an answer. He heard the approaching sound of wooden clogs behind him and slightly turned his head sideways to see a properly attired Shen Zequin with his fan in hand sneaking a glance at him. No Ji Gang seemed to answer Xiao Qi Ye, although he was looking at Shen Zequin, his aged face weathered and worn as he decisively concluded, "It's not going to happen." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Yao Wenyu was in the midst of lighting incense in the courtyard next door. He clutched the incense stick between his fingers, its fumes so intense that Hanu was unwilling to get close to him. Once the rain these 2 days came to a stop, mosquitoes ought to be making their presence known. Yao Wenyu could not stand the scent either. He was just scrutinizing the incense when it was taken away from him. Qiao Tianya brought the incense to his nose for a sniff. He wrinkled his nose and said, "This smell is too strong. Where is it from? Send it back to the sender for their own use." "It's from the merchants." Yao Wenyu turned his wheelchair to face the courtyard. "The Tathagata incense from the city of Lu province sells for an exorbitant amount in Juexi." Qiao Tianya pinched the incense to extinguish it. "It reeks of stinky tofu. The folks of Lu province have a taste for stinky tofu." Yao Wenyu lifted a hand to wave away the smell. "Remind Fei Sheng later not to light up this incense in his lordship's room." Feeling as if Yao Wenyu was avoiding him, Qiao Tianya jammed a wheelchair wheel with his foot and said, "You couldn't have seen him more than a few times, so how are you on familiar terms with him now?" "We all attend to official duties for his lordship." Yao Wenyu paused for a moment and turned his head aside to look at Qiao Tianya. "There's no unfamiliarity to speak of." Qiao Tianya was originally in good spirits, but his smile gradually dimmed under the exchange of gazes between him and Yao Wenyu. Yao Wenyu had never been willing to look Qiao Tianya in the eyes before. He would dodge him out of shame, as if his embarrassing predicament at night was always at the forefront of his mind. But now, he was frank and open, as if he was still that piece of unpolished jade that had never been tainted by the slightest hint of desire. No unfamiliarity to speak of. Qiao Tianya was no different from Fei Sheng, Kong Ling, and everyone else whom Yao Wenyu had met. He was no longer that secret and special one. With a flick of his sleeves, Yao Wenyu could revert to being a banished immortal. "It's raining heavily today. If you are not in a hurry, take your meal first before you step out. Changfeng and Yujing are coming in the afternoon, and it's also time to report on the matter of the Imperial Cavalry. See if you want to discuss it with them before heading out." As Yao Wenyu spoke, he looked at the wheel of the wheelchair before looking at Qiao Tianya again. "You're blocking it?" His smile was thin, as if resigned but at the same time, self-deprecating. "Being a cripple who can still skirt around obstacles is not something I can do. Don't make fun of me." The wind struck against the wind chimes, and a few drops of rain splattered on the thin blanket. Qiao Tianya shifted his leg away. He had always handled himself with ease, and yet he cut a sorry figure under Yao Wenyu's gaze. Yao Wenyu turned his wheelchair and entered the room. The wheels thumped against the floor, emitting a string of even noise. He pushed the wheelchair, exposing his wrist amid his movements. It still had Qiao Tianya's red thread around it. As he moved, his wide sleeve bunched up, and the thread was thus covered, vanishing amongst the cloud of white. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Ji Gang was resting with his head on an arm with his face to the wall, looking as if he was asleep. Shen Zequin set his folding fan at the edge of the bed and asked, "Is Shifu asleep?" Ji Gang opened his eyes. "You know Shifu is already asleep, and yet you still ask." Just like the time when he was young, Shen Zequin pulled the chair closer and said, "After I left the Temple of Penitence, I've never have had an all-night chat with Shifu again. You came tonight for a man." Ji Gang paused, unable to vent that fury on Shen Zequin. It dissipated in his chest, replaced by another kind of self-reproach and sorrow. What's so good about him? Your teacher and I both won't agree. Teacher praised him before. Shenzhequan spoke softly. A natural-born talent is exactly what teacher said to me. Can a prodigious talent bring domestic peace to his family? Ji Gang sat up and looked at Shenzhequan. A prodigious talent has to have the empire in his sights. Are you willing to sit in the same seat as him in the future? Shenzhequan's expression was docile as he lowered his eyes and said, "That's not for me to say." Ji Gang heaved a long sigh under the candlelight. After a long time, he bitterly said, "When the Grand Mentor asked you how you are going to exercise self-restraint when you have the Jin Yi Wei in your grasp, I ought to have realized that it was not a question for a student. Who in the world can hold the Jin Yi Wei in their control? The Grand Mentor hid it from everyone and taught you too much. You are such a good learner, so do you not understand? The twin jades that form a pair today will be the two tigers that fight for power in the future." It was not that Xiao Qiye was mediocre but that he was too outstanding, so much that Ji Gang could not set his mind at ease. If I were a man of use, the expression in Ji Gang's eyes was complicated as he gazed at Shenzhequan, and if your brother were still alive, then there's no harm in staking your bets on him, but I am old and useless. After my passing, you will have to face everyone in this world alone. It will be just you, so how can I feel reassured? End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 237, Heir. The rain in the courtyard came to a halt. Moonlight was late to come, and so it was dim in the room. Shenzhequan's slightly lowered eyes lay concealed in the darkness. He looked like a moored travel-weary traveler riding out the long, endless tide of the night. When he looked at Ji Gang again, it was with a gaze that he had never shown before, as if he had stripped off the skin named Prefectural Lord, leaving behind only a stretch of moonlight. Without Shifu and Cian, I am still me. Only that it won't be the me who fears everyone in the world but everyone who fears me. Shen Wei's blood runs in me. I have no need for heirs. Ji Gang's heart ached so much he nearly shed tears. You are my son, he said. I'm Shifu's son but my name is Shenzhequan. Teacher imparted the classics to me, yet I'm not an emperor. Emperor. The most supreme being of this world who stood at the very top and overlooked the world, if not a royal crown or official imperial representative, was the emperor. The emperor must not only be versed in the political art of checks and balances, but must also possess the broad-mindedness to accommodate the common people. Emperors in the flourishing eras that had the support of their people were all unparalleled men of benevolence. Shenzhequan had in his eyes a storm that was building up. He was the sudden downpour that swept through the mountains and rivers of the country, and the sharp blade that shredded heaven and earth to pieces, but he was not an emperor who ushered in a golden era of prosperity. Liu Bei has 120,000 strong armored cavalry, it's a cinch for their horses to set foot into Zongbo but Cian gave me his lifeblood. I have his horses, and his elder brother's grains. He's willing to leave the fields of Liu Bei and ride his horse in my Duan province. Shifu, he's not afraid of my garrison troops, and I am not afraid of his armored cavalry. One day, I will hold captive of the deer that the Li clan cast away, and Cian will hold me captive. The sun and the moon have coexisted in heaven and earth for tens of thousands of years without going at each other's throats. This is the stability that the world looks forward to. We are the equilibrium. The blazing sun and the luminous moon. The cessation of the war heralded the beginning of another battle. No sovereign could tolerate their coexistence in the east. It was only when Xiao Qiye and Shenzhequan were together that Liu Bei and Zongbo would be able to get the opportunity to rest and rebuild. Shenzhequan gave his tacit consent when Xiao Jiming built a riding stable on Mount Luo. This was his concession to Liu Bei, and also the opportunity he gave to Liu Bei. The bridle paths that Zongbo was building would break the boundary between both lands, and when they merged into one, they would become a behemoth entrenched in the northeast. Ji Gang sat cross-legged in silence. He's well trained in the Ji clan's boxing fist, and comes and goes freely. What's there to fear? Even so, you and he have no heirs. As long as this matter is left hanging in the air, Liu Bei and Zongbo can't last for long. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Xiao Qiye put on his armor and waited in the room for Shen Zequan to return. The sound of wheels rose from under the eaves. Fei Sheng lifted the hanging screen for Yao Wenyu and said, "His lordship is not yet back." The thin blanket on Yao Wenyu's knees was a little damp. Propping himself up on his wheelchair, he said, "I'm looking for the second master." Fei Sheng felt a little put on the spot. Xiao Qiye announced from within, "I'm here." Yao Wenyu graciously declined Fei Sheng's offer of help and turned his wheelchair around to enter himself. Xiao Qiye retracted his legs, sat up straight at the table, and set the military book aside next to his hand. "What can I do for you, Yuan Zhou? Rarely do I get the chance to see the second master. There are some things that aren't convenient to bring up in letters, so I can only discuss them face to face." Yao Wenyu took out his handkerchief and wiped the sweat on his hands. "Is second master free?" Xiao Qiye leaned back. "What matter is there that you have to bypass Lanzhou to discuss with me?" Yao Wenyu wiped his hands clean and folded the handkerchief before putting it back into place in his sleeves. He was in no hurry. Under the incessant sound of rain, he said, "It concerns Liu Bei. Naturally, it's more appropriate for me to discuss it with second master. Now that the Empress Dowager has suffered a setback in Chu capital, Shui Yanking's next move will be to remove Han Cheng's military power. When the time comes for the heir apparent to ascend to the throne, he will have her confer Kedong a title in order to secure Commander-in-Chief Qi and keep her from interfering with his plans. Does second master still intend to keep the appointment to head down to the Bianjun commandery?" Of course Xiao Qiye had to go. The trip to the Bianjun commandery would determine whether or not Hassan's surprise attack on Duan province would succeed. Besides, he trusted Qi Zuyin. Yao Wenyu got his answer from Xiao Qiye's silence. Changing the topic, he said, "The heir apparent's son, given that Xiao Jiming already had inherited Xiao Fangxiu's noble title, Xiao Sun ought to be called the heir apparent now," so he corrected himself and continued, "Does the heir apparent have a teacher to impart him elementary knowledge in dying?" Xiao Qiye tapped his index finger neutrally on the table. "You wish to teach Sun heir?" Xiao Qiye was quite a perceptive man. He had an inkling of Yao Wenyu's intent from the latter's change of topic. Shuiziaozuo's heir apparent was about to ascend to the throne, and they were going to confer a noble title upon Qi Zuyin, too. By the time the war with Bianxia was over, they might part ways with Qi Zuyin. Shen Zequan had his eyes on seizing Chu capital, and Yao Wenyu was already considering the issue of heirs. "Are wolves from Liu Bei?" Xiao Qiye raised his head slightly and said in a quiet voice, "Will not be emperors." Xiao Qiye and Shen Zequan have no children, so their intent in having Xiao Sun come to Zongbo to receive the teachings from Yao Wenyu and the rest was clear to Xiao Qiye. Xiao Sun was to be Shen Zequan's successor. This matter was too good of a deal for Liu Bei, so much that Xiao Qiye was not inclined to agree. Second master has his lordship's interests in mind and so is unwilling to let the Xiao clan take his lordship's place. But even if it were another child and not the Liu Bei's heir apparent, said child would not go by the surname Shen either, Yao Wenyu said to Xiao Qiye. His lordship would never let Shen Wei's name enter the ancestral temple. Shen Zequan wanted Shen Wei to continue as a wandering soul in the wilderness of Dun province, so giving him a place in the ancestral temple to receive offerings and incense was totally out of the question. What he wanted to choke off was the Shen clan's bloodline. Xiao Qiye said, "Sun heir is the heir apparent of the Prince of Liu Bei. My eldest brother will never agree to this." After a moment of silence, Yao Wenyu changed his tone into a conversational one between friends. "Do you have another option?" The rain of the night pitter-pattered down, and it was not at all cold in the room. Yao Wenyu, however, did not look too good. There are countless heroes in the world. Do you know why I came all the way from afar to Zongbo and threw in my lot with Lanzhou? Xiao Qiye's eyes were dark and deep. Yao Wenyu was not afraid of Xiao Qiye. As long as he could finish this game of Wiki, he did not fear anyone. He continued, I watched him flee with you northward, only to stop in Zongbo. I thought he wanted to clear Shenwei's name, but he did not care about that at all. He did not treat Zongbo as his homeland, nor did he treat Chu capital as his refuge. Advance and retreat all hinge on just one thought of his. I know he is not a man who was supposed to be an emperor, but I still wanted to assist him, because he is a natural-born overlord. Your father knew Zongbo was on a rapid rise to power and prominence. He granted Shen Zequan's entry into Libei, because Xiao Sun is Shen Zequan's one and only option. Xiao Fangxiu was the king of wolves who established the great territories of Libei, who established Dying. He could catch a whiff of Emperor Guangqing's desire standing on Loxia Pass, and at the most appropriate timing, he became a conferred prince of Great Zhou to hold a massive military force in his hand. He was far more visionary than his sons. Shen Zequan had only one future. Without Xiao Qiye and Xiao Sun, he would never have allowed Shen Zequan to return to Zongbo alive. Since Lanzhou dares to head towards that position, Xiao Qiye enunciated each word, it's his. It's his, Yao Wenyu said, but only if he has Xiao Sun. Xiao Qiye did not answer under the pattering sound of the rain. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The heir apparent found the night to be cold. She had not been sleeping well after her bout of illness and was often startled awake. At present, she was looking at the roof with open eyes, hanging in there until the hour of Mao before she rolled over and got up without even needing the palace maids to call her. The palace maids were all newcomers. They kneeled as they straightened out the hem of Li Jianting's robes, and when Li Jianting sat before the mirror, they held the jewelry case in hand to tidy up her hair. During this period of time, Li Jianting had lost a lot of weight, and she looked increasingly sharp and stern, with not a trace of a woman's delicateness and gentleness. Li Jianting had not slept well, and she was also just recovering from a major illness, so she was inevitably tired. In her trance, she felt a coolness on her ear. Before the palace maid who was leaning over to put on earrings for the heir apparent could react, the heir apparent jerked to her feet noisily with a ghastly pale complexion. Restraining herself, Li Jianting reprimanded in an undertone, "Take it away." The palace maids in the palace all kneeled down in a fluster, not knowing what they had done to incur the heir apparent's displeasure. Li Jianting pursed her lips into a tight line and amidst the dead silence, saw her blurred figure in the mirror. She stared at the image of herself for a long time. "I don't wear earrings when I'm receiving lessons from the various gentlemen in the front hall." The palace maids kowtowed a few times and answered in timid voices. Not requiring their assistance anymore, Li Jianting put on her overcoat herself. Those precious and valuable materials covered her on the outside, like her own suit of armor. She felt better, but she still did not speak. When she stepped out of the door, she saw a familiar figure under the eaves. Fu Man stepped forth to open up the umbrella for Li Jianting. Fawning on her, he said, "It's raining so heavily today. This humble slave has prepared a sedan for your highness. Your highness can take a nap. This humble slave will call you when we arrive before the hall. I'll make sure not to hold up matters." Li Jianting did not move. She smiled and asked, "Good morning, Gong Gong. You must be busy investigating the case, aren't you?" Fu Man did not dare to rush her either. How would this humble slave know how to investigate a case? It's all at the Grand Secretary's advice. He specifically sent a few excellencies from the Ministry of Justice to supervise. What he meant was that he was not the sole person passing judgment on the case, since it all went through Kong Chiu, so it had nothing much to do with him. Without blinking her eyes, Li Jianting said, "So Feng Quan can't be released." Fu Man switched tactics and started to put on a worried look. He's Lady Mu's brother and he has connections with the garden service. The Ministry of Justice is ill-advised to bend the law to release him. This humble slave made several successive trips to the office compound and has also mentioned to the Grand Secretary that he's a good man. Fu Man reckoned that Feng Quan's return to serve in the palace must have been because he had attended to the heir apparent for a long time and had built up a bond of master and servant between them. So he did not slander Feng Quan in front of Li Jianting. He knew that Li Jianting was still partial to Feng Quan. At any rate, he had plenty of time in the future. As long as he maintained this position, Li Jianting would sooner or later get tired of Feng Quan. Li Jianting said, "I've been sick, and have not received any message either. What exactly is going on?" Fu Man held up the umbrella for Li Jianting while he stood in the rain. "Just investigating, Your Highness, please watch your feet. The steps here are slippery. Let this humble slave hold you. The issue with this case lies in the food. This humble slave and the Ministry of Justice checked your Highness's meals that day, and the garden service proved to be the most problematic of all. The people there are a mixed group, with people harboring ulterior motives lying low among them." He downplayed his role in this case and let the Ministry of Department that had been supervising assume full responsibility. So if Feng Quan were to die, it would be Kong Qiu's problem. The Grand Secretary was her teacher who decided whether or not she could ascend to the throne. Even if Li Jianting was displeased, she could not get angry with Kong Qiu. Li Jianting originally did not plan to get into the sedan chair, but she changed her mind at the last minute and bent over to enter it. In high spirits, Fu Man called out to Her Highness to slow down, then he tucked in the hanging screen of the sedan for Li Jianting and urged the sedan-bearing eunuchs to hurry towards Mingli Hall. By the time Li Jianting arrived at Mingli Hall, Sen Yu had already been waiting a long time. Standing under the eaves, he saw Li Jianting coming down from the sedan and could not help but furrow his brows. The heir apparent had never been one for these before. That was how she could get into the good graces of the ministers. How was it that the moment the Empress Dowager fell from grace, she could not even walk even a few steps anymore? Sen Yu paid his obeisances to Li Jianting, who stood under the eaves and returned the greetings. Sen Yu did not enter the hall immediately but said with solemn deference, "Rain in spring is as precious as oil. The fertile farmlands of the 8 cities are all affected by this rain. Your Highness has yet to ascend to the throne, and has no title to your name, so how can you ride a sedan in the palace?" As if enlightened, Li Jianting gathered her sleeves in apology and said, "This student has realized the error of her ways." Fu Man had been following behind when he heard this. How could he let the heir apparent bear the blame? He was the one who arranged for the sedan, so he hurriedly said, "Her Highness has just recovered from a major illness, and her esteemed health is precious. What's more, this rain is so heavy." Sen Yu's countenance abruptly changed. He bellowed, "Her Highness and I are in the midst of conversation as student and teacher. How dare a eunuch interrupt?" Bemoaning his blunder, Fu Man immediately kneeled and kowtowed. This humble slave, this humble slave. To think that in his anxiety, he had violated the taboo between the eunuchs and court ministers. Sen Yu and Kong Qiu were both people who had been through the undermining and corruption of state politics by the Pan faction, so it was with a passion that they hated palace eunuchs meddling in governmental affairs. Fu Man usually moved around in the office compound, and his merit lay in the fact that he was willing to play dumb and would never interject. He had just arrived to serve the heir apparent today and already, Sen Yu could see how he dared to arrange for a sedan and interjected into their conversation. If he allowed him to remain for a few more days, wouldn't that lead to an absolute collapse of order? Since you dare to break the heir apparent's habit today, then you will dare to mess with the heir apparent's court administration in the future. Sen Yu was flushed with anger. The audacity of you, castrated crook. Fu Man kowtowed until his forehead was adorned with new bruises overlapping old bruises. Li Jianting piped up, "It was my fault, teacher." Sen Yu promptly said, "Your Highness is the heir apparent. The sovereign ought to keep his distance from the crafty sycophants. Men, strip him of his covering and drag him away. Fu Man was a eunuch of the Directorate of Ceremonies. According to the rules during the reign of Yanji, Sen Yu must never bellow and order him around like this. Hearing the guard's footsteps, both of Fu Man's hands trembled as he shuffled towards Li Jianting on his knees and pleaded, "This humble slave deserves death. This humble slave." The guard stripped Fu Man without so much a word and dragged him to the open space in front of Mingli Hall. Rain poured down over them. Fu Man kneeled in the middle, his lips turning blue from the freezing cold. Sen Yu commanded, "Slap his mouth." A guard lifted the hem of his robe and stood before Fu Man to give him a slap with such force that Fu Man's left ear rang. He did not dare to dodge or yell. Without giving the order to stop, Sen Yu turned around to lift the hanging screen and motioned for Li Jianting to enter, leaving Fu Man out cold in the open space. The sound of slapping never stopped. End chapter. Note. 1. The quote Qin lost his deer, and all under heaven chased after it is from records of the grand historian biography of Marquis Huaiyan. Deer is a metaphor for the imperial throne. It's an illustration of the rise of numerous rivaling warlords contesting for supremacy to capture the prize, which is the empire lost by the Qin dynasty. Two princes or lords with different surnames from the imperial family are those conferred princes who were bestowed the title by the emperor. 3 hour of Mao is 5 to 7 a.m. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 238, Burning with Anxiety. No one was called to serve in Mingli Hall at this time. Sen Yu lowered the hanging screen and led Li Jianting to a seat. Resuming his usual expression, he said, "I shouldn't have asked your highness to come over while your highness is still ill, but this is a matter of urgency and I had no choice but to rush your highness into coming." Li Jianting took her seat and said, "Please go ahead and speak your mind, teacher." Feeling uneasy and apprehensive, Sen Yu listened to the continuing sound of slaps outside and cautiously lifted the bamboo blinds by the window. Only when he was certain that no one else was around that he said to Li Jianting, "The case of the Dan City field taxes is about to be concluded soon. It implicates a great number of officials. Liang Qiushan has already started to audit the Chuan City field taxes, and next up will be the Hua clan of Di City. Your Highness is alone in the palace and us humble subjects are all on edge with anxiety. The rear palace of the imperial harem was a forbidden zone, and court ministers were all not permitted to enter. Li Jianting had only just gotten poisoned a while back, and the Grand Secretariat was worried that the Empress Dowager would be driven to take desperate action and hold the life of the heir apparent hostage against them." The sides of Li Jianting's snow-white cheeks were covered with a velvet collar. She frowned slightly, the flower Huaidian between her brows moving slightly in response to the movement. "We are now at the critical juncture with the conclusion of the Dan City field taxes and the survey of the fields. There mustn't be any delay. The various teachers need not slow down the process for my sake. Just go by the book." Sen Yu used to be prejudiced against Li Jianting, but the heir apparent had a dignified bearing and she was a keen learner to boot. She deferentially addressed them all as teachers, and now she was even willing to put her life on the line for the commoners' fields. Emotions welled up in Sen Yu, and he lifted the hem of his robe to kneel to Li Jianting. As he kowtowed, he said with an indistinct sob, "Your Highness, this is really too aggravating an injustice for your Highness." Li Jianting got up and lightly helped Sen Yu up. "Teacher, please get up quickly." Sen Yu wiped his tears with his sleeves. "Your Highness, please look out for your safety in the palace. If the Empress Dowager dares to coerce your Highness, we will undoubtedly fight with our lives." Li Jianting sighed with deep feeling. "I'm not deserving of it. But teacher, the Marquis of Helian of Chuan City is an old family friend of the Han clan of Wu City. This is a perilous task to undertake." Seeing Li Jianting being so frank with himself, Sen Yu remembered Han Cheng and could not help feeling sorrowful. As court officials, they boasted themselves of being ministers loyal to the state, and yet they left the heir apparent stranded in the palace, living each day in imminent danger of death. Tears streamed down his aged eyes as he said, Han Cheng has the capital command troops under his control. We do not dare to act arbitrarily. It has been hard on your highness. Han Cheng's squandering of public funds is common knowledge among the imperial court and common folks. Moreover, he's narrow-minded and unwilling to tolerate others. Teacher is the one being put on the spot. The 8 great training divisions, as the capital command troops, have been sticking to their old ways in recent years and accomplished nothing ever since the reign of Xian when Shi Guan was still around. Li Jianting slowed down at this point. The capital command troops and the Empress Dowager share a common lot. It's indeed difficult if the various teachers wish to take disciplinary action against Han Cheng. Sen Yu did not expect the heir apparent to see through it so clearly, thus he said, Commander-in-Chief Qi is still in Chu capital now, and the Qidong garrison troops are just beyond the city gate. The situation is already at a point where there is no time to lose. Us humble subjects have to remove Han Cheng as soon as possible. Li Jianting said, Commander-in-Chief Qi is here to accompany the main Madam Qi home for a visit, so there are only a few thousand garrison troops in the entourage. If they were really to come to blows, I'm afraid Qidong would be too late to come to the rescue, and Chu capital would be in a dangerous situation. The 8 great training divisions had 20,000 soldiers. Not only were they familiar with the streets of Chu capital, they also controlled the opening and closing of the city gate. Moreover, Han Cheng had the Jin Yue as his informants. He could keep an eye on Qi Zuyan's movements at all times. Half a month had already passed since the day at the prison when Qi Zuyan obscured the facts and deceived Han Cheng. Han Cheng should have already realized it by now. Li Jianting stood up and saw Fu Man was still getting slapped through the gap in the bamboo blinds. Her expression remained unchanged, but the gaze in her eyes was cold and indifferent. Her tone towards Sen Yu, however, was still mild and gentle. I have a plan that can remove Han Cheng. Your Highness, please go on, Sen Yu promptly said. The inner court has been just like an ornament after the reign of Xian. Han Cheng is complacent and full of himself now that the eastern depot is empty, Li Jianting said. To remove Han Cheng, we need to have the assistance of the palace eunuchs. The color drained from Sen Yu's face as he said in horror, the Pan faction undermined court politics for a mere 10 years, and they ruined court discipline to such an extent. The Secretariat Elder did his utmost in order to get the inner court to relinquish power. Your Highness, these castrated eunuchs must never be used. Wrong, teacher. Li Jianting turned around and said to Sen Yu, the corruption of state politics by the eunuch faction is in truth the fault of the Son of Heaven. These palace eunuchs are the domestic slaves of the Son of Heaven. They can be used but not entrusted with heavy responsibility. Li Jianting was taught by Xue Zhuo, so she was very familiar with the Pan faction during the reign of Yanji to the reign of Xian. Like Kong Qiu, Sen Yu, and the rest of the Grand Secretariat ministers, she had misgivings about the palace eunuchs. But being a minister and being a sovereign were two separate matters. The forces around authority and power were just like the surge of undercurrents. They were impossible to eradicate clean, and only by using them would one be able to hold them in check. The Hanqi festival is right around the corner. As usual, the palace has to host a banquet for its officials. The time when Han Cheng removes his blade and enters, Li Jianting raised her hand to pull off the golden hairpin in her hair, is the time to act. As the commander of the Jin Yue and the viceroy of the 8 great training divisions at the same time, Han Cheng had the right to carry his blade with him when he came and went. But during the reign of Tianchen, when Li Jianheng met with an assassination attempt, an exception was made for Shen Zequan to become Li Jianheng's guard. The authority to carry blades was then split apart, and the blade-bearing guards during banquets were all personally appointed by the emperor himself. Now that Great Zhou had no emperor, Han Cheng had to attend the banquet without his blade. Sen Yu looked at that golden hairpin. The fingers holding the golden hairpin were slender and pale from having resided indoors for a long time. The heir apparent had gotten so thin after this illness that her bones were prominent, and her wrist, which lay covered under the brocade, exuded toughness. Sen Yu lifted the hem of his robe and prostrate over the ground, sobbing. Han Cheng is well versed in martial arts. What are we to do if he gets violent in the face of danger and hurts your highness? Commander-in-Chief Qi won a battle at the Bianjun Commandery in spring. The Grand Secretary can grant her a seat at the feast as a commendation. Han Cheng is the Viceroy of the Capital Command troops. Let him sit side by side with Commander-in-Chief Qi. Li Jianting had given this matter careful deliberations. Have Fu Man and Feng Quan lead the palace eunuchs. As long as Han Cheng strides through the palace gate, there will be no return for him. It was when Sen Yu listened to this point that he truly got a feel of just how formidable the heir apparent was. The rivalry between Fu Man and Feng Quan began as early as Emperor Tianqin's time. Fu Man's placing of Feng Quan in the forefront of his investigation this time was precisely to eliminate those who opposed him. He wanted to climb to the top of the inner court and become the seal-holding director of the Directorate of Ceremonies after Li Jianting's ascension to the throne. This person was adept in the art of flattery and had repeatedly changed sides several times. If they were to put him on his own, then it only took a change in the situation and for Han Cheng to entice him with benefits for him to possibly ruin matters. Li Jianting returned Feng Quan to his place beside her because Feng Quan would never work in cahoots with Fu Man after his imprisonment this time. Their mutual misgivings about the other would keep them in mutual check. In fact, they might even continue to pit against each other in order to win the heir apparent's trust. Han Cheng had the military seal of the Capital Command troops and the authority token of the Jin Yue on him. Once he died, the 8 great training divisions and Jin Yue would both be thrown into chaos, and the crisis in Chu capital would be easily averted. But if Han Cheng were to attend the banquet without his blade, he would leave his trusted Jin Yue outside the hall. The time in which they were able to kill him was rather short. Should they fail, then once he issued the call for action, the court officials inside the hall would be in imminent danger. This matter has to be carefully planned by teacher and the Grand Secretary. Not a word of it must get out. Saying so, Li Jianting partially bent over to help Sen Yu up. Success or failure hinges on this one move. The frigid wind abruptly swept up the bamboo blinds. Sen Yu met Li Jianting's eyes and gave a severe nod of his head as he answered in a deep, quiet voice, "We will not fail your highness for your overwhelming benevolence." Meanwhile, Fu Man, who was in the rain, had been slapped until both his ears had temporarily gone deaf. Blood was trickling out of the corners of his mouth. He was weeping when he saw Sen Yu stride through the door and watched him with a frosty expression. Dazed, he pleaded, "This humble slave has realized the errors of my ways. Your Excellency, Your Excellency." Sen Yu dusted off his sleeves and said, "If not for Her Highness' benevolence, I would not let you off tonight. Forget it. You may take your leave." The guards withdrew back and returned to stand at attention under the eaves of Mingli Hall. Fu Man shifted forward on his knees and repeatedly kowtowed at Sen Yu. "It is as Your Excellency lectured. This humble slave dare not commit such a mistake again." Li Jianting lifted the hanging screen and stepped out to see the wretched sight of Fu Man's face stained with tears and snot. As she lowered her sleeves, she said, "You may leave. Clean up and put on a fresh set of robes. Wait in attendance before the courtyard." Fu Man raised his arm to wipe at the tears on his face. With eyes on Li Jianting's shoes, he kowtowed a few more times. "This humble slave shall do as Her Highness command." As Fu Man got to his feet, he hastily bundled up his soaking wet robe. Through the pouring rain, he saw no sign of disdain on the heir apparent's face, only a faint hint of compassion. *******. Kong Qiu dared not make it public as he went about the preparations. All of their discussions took place in their personal residences. They did not gather in groups, but instead used visitation cards to make individual visits. The rain came and went, and in the blink of an eye, it was the Hanqi festival. Feng Quan had been recuperating in recent days after having been tortured in prison. Today, he was helping the heir apparent affix her flower Huadian. He bowed over in front of the mirror, revealing the marks of torture on his wrist. When he lifted his arm, Li Jianting did not shut her eyes. She watched Feng Quan, as if scrutinizing him. Feng Quan's hand trembled slightly under Li Jianting's gaze and almost affixed the flower Huadian in the wrong spot. Li Jianting held Feng Quan's wrist with her fingers and guided the flower embellishment back to the center of her forehead. What did the physician say over the last few days? Feng Quan listened to the sound of the breeze stirred up by the palace maid's movements. Avoiding Li Jianting's gaze, he answered. My gratitude for your highness' concern. The physician said that there's no major issue. Li Jianting got to her feet, and the palace maid in attendance behind her helped to put on her outer robe. Li Jianting turned her head aside to look at herself in the mirror. She always seemed to be staring at herself in the mirror, as if she was searching for something. Update me on the details concerning the garden service after the banquet. Li Jianting adjusted the golden hairpiece by her temples and turned towards the entrance of her palace, no longer looking at that reflection. Feng Quan understood and intuitively stepped forward to support Li Jianting. Li Jianting took a few steps forward and stepped onto the light on the ground. She lowered her eyes to look at that light. The polished floor reflected the sky outside, making it seem as if she was standing amidst the clouds, and it was at this moment that she was strangely childlike as she stood there for a long time, as though she was reluctant to part from this scene. Fu Man, who was outside, bowed as he walked up the steps and waited by the entrance, saying softly, Your Highness, it's time. Feng Quan felt his shoulders sink slightly. The breeze after the rain swayed the golden hairpin by the heir apparent's temple. The butterfly spun around in a circle and bumped lightly into her coiffed, bound-up hair. Li Jianting strode out. Han Cheng rode a carriage to the palace gate, where he saw the Marquis of Helion when he dismounted. The Marquis of Helion had been waiting for a long time. When he saw Han Cheng coming over, he hurriedly went up to greet him and headed into the palace with him side by side. Why have you been turning a blind eye these days? The Chief Surveillance Bureau is impeaching me now, saying that I have forcibly occupied the commoners' fields. Isn't this just using a lie to start a fight? Twirling the walnuts in his hand, Han Cheng said, Tell that to Sen Yu. Do you think he will be willing to believe that? Now that he has the accounts Pan Lin gave him in his hands, he has an estimation of the 8 cities' field taxes. Then we have to think of a way. The Marquis of Helion followed close behind Han Cheng and spoke in an undertone, They want to confine the Empress Dowager. I can't even get to see her now. Han Cheng felt that the Empress Dowager herself was a clay Buddha crossing the river. She could not even save herself, let alone others. The accounts had already been pursued all the way to the city of Chuan City. Looking at Kong Chiu and the others' stance of fighting to their last breath, they would not stop and let the matter drop like they had in the past. For this matter, he had been having sleepless nights. Stroking his growing beard, he said, I'm anxious too, but will being anxious help matters? He cast a glance at the eunuch leading the way in front and whispered to the Marquis of Helion, The heir apparent fell ill but turned up fine. What can we do about that? What kind of loyal and righteous thing is Fu Man? The Marquis of Helion walked fast, sweating slightly. Eunuchs like them don't recognize the words loyalty and righteousness. And given the type of poison death chases, I don't believe a word he says at all. He must have tampered with it, not daring to offend the Grand Secretariat. Isn't he now serving by the heir apparent's side? They are all a low-down bunch. Seeing as they were about to arrive at their destination, Han Cheng tucked the walnuts under the robe on his bosom at the same time that the eunuch withdrew. He gave a slight nod to the guard and said to the Marquis of Helion, Follow me to my residence for a discussion after the banquet. This is not the place to talk with so many eyes around here. The Marquis of Helion was burning with anxiety, but he had no choice other than to acquiesce and follow right on Han Cheng's heels into the hall. End chapter. Note: Cold Food Festival, or Hanqi Festival, the day before the Qingming Festival when people eat only cold food.